Yeah, thank you. I will bring this a bit to a higher level and talk about language operations, LangOps, which in short is like DevOps, but for language. A few words about me. Most people know me as founder of Trados. So I played my role in making Trados the working horse of the translation industry. And the interesting thing is that the localization industry had its ChatGPT moment already 8 years ago. The T in ChatGPT stands for transformer, and that was actually invented for machine translation. And it's already 8 years ago that big tech companies claimed human parity for machine translation, which should have changed, of course, totally the industry. But it didn't. And the reason for that is that we keep asking, we did and we keep asking the wrong question. People till today are asking, when is machine translation as good as a linguist? Which in my opinion is a bit of a philosophical and not that meaningful question, because the real question to ask is machine translation as, let's say, mediocre as what you typically get when you outsource translation, because humans are also not so great. And it's often not the mistake of the humans, but the way translation is done, their access to information, the time and also the money budget making available to deliver that service. And the second question is also much easier to answer because you can simply compare. So what I'm already saying for years is that we should actually sunset CAT tools and replace it by a totally different workflow, which we have used and deployed already very successfully for years. The problem with CAT tools is that segment-based recycling takes segments out of context. The previous demonstration showed how important context is. And it's so what you should do is not recycle segment by segment, but like a CMS, recycle blocks of content in variable granularity, because that's safe recycling. The rest you can machine translate, and after this, you have a readily translated document. Of course, machine translation is not perfect. So we do want to annotate, correct, then of course, estimate the quality, define a certain quality level. If this is above a certain threshold, so the famous fit for purpose, you are done. If not, well, then you of course need to revise the segments which are not fit for purpose, which in many cases can be done not necessarily by linguists, but by people who are experts actually in the field. Then you update your linguistic assets and you are done. In this case, you don't need a CAT tool, but you rather need a revision tool. And also the people using the tool are not necessarily linguists, but rather subject matter experts. This should have happened already, let's say 8 years ago, but only very few use such workflow. And then this happened. So 2 years ago, the world changed and we are actually living sci-fi with generative AI. And if you look at this workflow, if you look at sunsetting CAT with generative AI, of course, it can take care of steps like the annotation and the correction, as we have seen before, but also the quality estimation and maybe also automatically the revision. So there are many areas where generative AI can play a big role. I did a similar poll last year at Logworld, where I was moderating the key panel. And I asked the crowd whether generative AI is disrupting localization. And they had the option to say, well, it will be like NMT, big hype, little change, which many people still suggest, or this time it will be different. And I was surprised how many people said that this time it will be different. NMT already should have disrupted localization. Gen AI, I think now definitely will. But again, we are asking the wrong question. So what we are doing is, many people are doing, they're comparing the machine translation quality of ChatGPT versus what Google Translate or DeepL is doing, or they compare it with tools like Grammarly. But if you look at it, what we are currently doing in our industry is we're using single task tools, and that results in a single purpose industry. The big difference between NMT and LLM is not the output quality, but NMT can do one thing, translate. Whereas an LLM can do 100 things. It can summarize, it can answer questions, it can correct, and. Similarly, a terminology database can do one thing. You can search for an English term and you find the French translation. Whereas if you elevate a terminology database to a multilingual knowledge system, then you can have a knowledge graph which describes the knowledge of your customers. A translation memory can give you a translated segment, whereas a content repository can recycle content in variable granularity, and a TMS as a translation management system, so it can manage translations, whereas a language factory can do way more. So in the end, if you continue to keep single DaaS tools, you stay a single purpose industry, or if you work for an enterprise department. Whereas if you move to the world of AI, you can go towards language operations, which means more than translation. It goes beyond translation by enabling companies to manage multilingual content. Because if you look at what the industry thinks they are doing and what the model they are supporting is, and I'm always calling this praying, you have somebody who creates content owner, and that content owner broadcasts this content via different channels to its customers. And obviously, if you broadcast a program in France, you have to do it in French. And if you look at the tech lines at the leading companies in our space, then they're describing exactly this. They're saying, we are ensuring you are understood anywhere in any language. Does your brand speak the language, and so on. If you make a little change here, if you change this ensuring you are understood from passive to active, so if you're saying ensuring that you understand everybody in any language, then you get a totally different industry, because then you're not talking about praying, which is unidirectional, but about communicating. Because today, and they do this already for years, customers do talk back. So of course, content creation, translation is important, but there are many other areas like language neutral product search, chatbots, customer support, knowledge sharing, and so on, which all need to be supported and support multilingual content. So it's not only about translation and supporting praying, it's actually helping companies to communicate with their customers. And that's where LangOps comes in. LangOps, like DevOps, is an organization which tries to push forward a certain approach dealing with multilingual data. It's langops.org. You can find more information. And I'm not reading all the principles here. For this, we don't have enough time anymore. But the idea is that you understand all your customers, not only that you are understood, that you understand your customers, that you assist any customer-facing role, that you embrace data-centric AI, and that you have a try AI first approach, and a few more. So all these things can be supported by linguistic assets. And the great thing is that in localization, a lot of linguistic assets are created if you do it right. So you have high quality multilingual content. If you go beyond terminology management towards knowledge management, then you have a multilingual knowledge system, which has formalized content, which is easy to create by SMEs, and which is machine consumable via Sparkle or other interfaces. Of course, you have machine translation engines, and you produce AI models like the one which was shown before. So a lot of linguistic assets are created if done right. And these assets can support any enterprise AI initiative. So you have localization assets which help to automate translation and natural language processing. But in the next step, they can also help content creation, so authoring. But basically, in a third step, all AI-driven business apps. And that's the biggest topic currently. So we go way beyond translation, and our localization assets can be used for way more than just squeezing the last drop out of leveraging for translation. And what are these use cases? Well, obviously machine translation, but there are others like cross-language product search, faceting of search, categorization and classification. Then, of course, the whole area of content creation. Every translation workflow starts with source context. But if you already automate the content creation, then maybe there's no translation anymore because the content is created directly in the respective languages, which definitely is a big disruptor. Then text analytics. So analyzing and extracting information out of all the information which is out there. And then, of course, data for LLM training, smart prompting like RAG, and hallucination detection. So there are many areas which go beyond translation and which we actually can provide the data for. If you're interested, go in langops.org, become a LangOps pioneer. And with this, and I had to talk unfortunately very fast because little time was left, I stop share and pass the word to Marc.
Hello? Okay. I cannot start my video, so if I should be in a video, then I should get permission for that.
We can see your slide. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, then I start like that. So I will just say a few words to introduce what we did and what we do, and then I will hand over to Stine. So first, a few thoughts from a general perspective. Printed books and spreading reading and writing and spreading of reading and writing capabilities in Europe were the precondition of the fast development of humanity took in the last 500 years. So this is something I think can be the same or can be similar to what happens currently with AI. So AI currently goes into the potential that many people or more or less everyone who tries to go a bit into depth with that can start training engines, can start doing actual software development. So can influence what software does. And that's a big difference to before. So far, you had to be an expert, you had to study, you had to learn a lot to actually change the output of software, to change what software was doing. Now, with the arriving of LLMs, everybody is able of starting to do that, at least not without any training, not without any learning of something, but with little learning, little training, you're able to do that. So it's a little bit like learning the basic skills, like learning to read, learning to write, but you don't have to study anymore. But you're able to bring in your expert knowledge for doing that. And this is what Word Translation is doing. And this is what we, with Transit 5, with our Transit 5 consortium, try to enable LSPs to be able to do that with a software base, to work with LLMs in everyday's work. So to bring into life what Jochen just talked about, to connect the different worlds, so to speak, and to bring into life language operations. Stine can go to the next slide, I think. Okay, so what did we do within Transit 5? We did enable every project manager to predefine prompts and train models with terminology that is present in Transit 5 and with translation examples, and to do that for ChatGPT and to play around with that and so on, and to have that in a whole system that you can use for your multilingual workflows. Still, Transit 5, Jochen was talking about not going for the segmented way of working. Still, Transit 5, as any translation tool, works in a segmented way. But when we work with GPT, we are not sending the data segmented. We are sending it with as much context as GPT is capable of taking. So we are counting tokens before we are sending segments to it. And then we are adding as many segments in a row to one request, so that GPT has as much context as possible. And therefore, we get a really good understanding of GPT for the context, which if you compare it to for example, traditional NMTs, is much, much better regarding context understanding. Yeah, and besides that, GPT can be used within the translation environment in the same way as other linguistic resources. So like term collections, translation memories, other machine translation resources. So there's not a big change in the process for the overall daily work, but there's a big change in the way that AI is used, and that you're able to introduce that in your daily work. And I think this is what Stine will show you now more in detail, and I hand over to her.
Yes, so I will take over now from Marc and show you how we implemented Translate 5's GPT integration with one of our clients. The client is, of course, anonymized, but I can say something general about their translation needs. They have a lot of small products where they have short text, both shorter user manuals and label text for their products. And they also do have some marketing content like leaflets and website content that they need translated. They are a very cost-oriented client, like many clients are. And so they had like the expectation that they could start using Gen AI and then save a lot of money. It didn't really put it like I wrote it here, we can replace our LSP and translate with ChatGPT, but we got the impression that that was actually what they wanted. So obviously we had to enter into dialogue with them. And so we explained to them the challenges of LLMs and why we didn't think it was a good idea that they just did everything on their own and that they needed to involve us in the implementation. So what we did is we presented our AI product offering to them, explained how we can fine-tune LLMs in Translate 5, how they can get access to them in Instant Translate, the portal of Translate 5, and how we can also handle different types of post-editing for them, depending on the quality needs for their different text types. We also did an ROI calculation of different AI implementation scenarios. What would their cost savings be in year 1 and year 2 if we fine-tuned LLMs for a number of languages, so that they could really see the benefit of making this investment. So after we had this dialogue with them, we came up with this solution for them, where we did fine-tuning of ChatGPT in Translate 5 for some languages based on this ROI calculation. And for the other languages where we didn't do a fine-tuning, we used generic NMT. We did then do a pre-translation with the fine-tuned GPTs in Translate 5, and then we do a post-editing. For some text types, we do a light post-editing. For some, we do a full post-editing, and for other, we do a completely 100% human translation. The client owns the fine-tuned models because they paid for them, and they can also get access to them in Instant Translate in Translate 5. This means that over time, the translation cost will be reduced because the post-editing costs are much lower because of the high quality output we get from the fine-tuned engines. And maybe I should also just mention here that we use ChatGPT, yes, and the client is fully aware of that, and they have agreed that it's okay that we use ChatGPT with their content. So from a data security perspective, that's important to mention. So after agreeing on this solution with the client, we started the fine-tuning process. And what we did is that we had a very close cooperation between our internal fine-tuning expert, Stine, and the translators who have been working on this client for a long time. Stine prepared the data for the fine-tuning, and then she asked the translators to evaluate the output. They came back with their feedback on the output on the fine-tuned models, and Stine then turned this feedback into adjustments to the prompts and training examples, etc. This was an ongoing process that was repeated several times, but the result was that the output of the fine-tuned models improved a lot. After finishing the fine-tuning, we were ready to start using the models in the translation projects. And the project management is similar to normal project, like Marc just explained. We do the pre-translation with the GPT fine-tuned models in Translate 5, like we could do with any NMT. And then the translators post-edit the translation, and then the process is just as normal. The only difference is that we keep evaluating the performance of the models to see if we can then tweak them a little to get an even better output. So now I'd like to show you what the fine-tuning interface looks like in Translate 5. As Marc mentioned, the fine-tuning can be done by any project manager. At least it's technically very easy to use the interface, but I would say that there are some skills that you need to be able to get a good result. As a minimum, you need a good understanding of prompting and how LLMs work. And the more experience you get with prompting, the better results you'll get. At World Translation, we have a dedicated person for this, which I think is also the reason why we have been getting so good results. So this is what the fine-tuning interface looks like. Here in the blue box, we have a default system message that's always there in the system in Translate 5. Then in the green box, we have the customizable system message where we can tweak the prompt the way we want. We can add information about style, tone of voice, any linguistic instructions, for example, about specific grammatical forms that the model should be using, etc. It can also be formatting instructions or any other kind of client-specific requirements. Some of the instructions are the same for all languages for a client, where other parts of it are language specific. So this is where we rely on the feedback from our translators in creating these prompts. Then we have the orange box here, where we have training examples. Together with the system message, we need to add at least 10 training examples that show ChatGPT what we want. And it's important that the training examples reflect what we have in the system message to get a good results. Then after adding these examples, we have the option here in the red window to try out if the system message works like you want it to. So you can insert a source sentence and then immediately after see the output with your model to see if you're satisfied with it. You also have the option of adding term bases and translation memories to the model. And then once you're happy with everything, you can submit the training by pressing this training button here. So it is really very simple to use. On this slide, you can see what it looks like in the project view in Translate 5. Here in the green box, we have the segment view that you know from other CAT tools as well. Here in the purple box, you can see the pre-translation that was inserted from the fine-tuned model, which we can then, of course, post-edit. And here in the orange box, we have the visual view of Translate 5, where you can see on the left side the source text and on the right side the target text in context. And this will also be adapted when we adjust the translation in the purple box. So this was a little bit about the technical side of it. So let me just go back to the client again. As I mentioned, they had the expectation that they would start using AI for translation and not need us as much anymore. So what was important for us was showing them that implementing LLMs in their translation setup is not something you can just do if you don't know anything about how languages and translation work. And as I see it, this is a very important task that we as LSP have in this age of AI, showing that our clients why they still need us, and very importantly, also all the skilled freelance translators that are out there. So in this slide, I'd like to sum up where we added value to the process of implementing AI for this client. First of all, the translators added value because they are native speakers. They have a very good linguistic understanding because they don't just speak the language, they also understand how it works. They also have experience with translation technology and different kinds of text types, which means that they are able to help us tweak the prompt so that we get better output. Together with that, we have us as an LSP, where we have expertise in prompting LLMs, or we have gained expertise in it recently. And then we have this general linguistic understanding of how languages work. We also have a general overview of the translation technology landscape, and then we have an understanding of our clients and their individual needs. So this altogether means that we are able to know how we can best meet the different needs of our clients. So the combination of the expertise of the translators and our expertise as an LSP makes it possible for us to add value for the client. They get better prompts, which results in better output from the LLMs. And at the same time, we can help them get a fit-for-purpose localization strategy so that we don't deliver too good quality when it's not needed. But when they need first-class quality, then that's what we deliver to them. Implementing the setup with fine-tuned LLMs for this client, of course, means that the costs are reduced, because when we have a better output from an LLM, it means that there are less costs for post-editing. My hope is, however, that they don't decide to just cut their translation budget and save money, but instead spend it on other linguistic tasks so that they simply get more value for the translation budget. Then we'll go back to Marc again for an outlook.
Okay, so thank you. And one thing I would like to add, this is that I said that the development of AI is going into the direction that everyone can do software development in a way. That, of course, doesn't mean that you don't have to have knowledge for doing it. Like you have to be able to read and write if you want to gather knowledge, and if you want to develop knowledge, you have to have certain basic qualities. And actually, these in the translation industry, these are qualities like you have to know your client, you have to know the target language, you have to be subject matter expert, and so on and so on. And for these reasons, it was very, very important that we did the development that we do with integrating GPT together with World Translation. Without their feedback and without very close working together with Stine, it wouldn't have been possible in any way to do the development in the way we did it, to do the integration in the way we did it. So that's very, very important to have these people to have this knowledge. And yeah, so to give you an outlook where we want to go, currently we are discussing that together with the consortium members, what will be next, what will be the next development steps. So one very important thing will be to enhance the further integration, that Stine already showed you, to make the training more easy, to make the feedback loops better, and so on, to go into the details there. But then there are other things that are really high in the agenda, but always that depends on where the community wants to go, because Transit 5 is an open source system, is very much community driven. So at the moment, it's likely that we go for usage of GPT or ChatGPT via MS Azure Cloud because of privacy and reliability reasons. Then LQM and QM analysis via LLM is very high on agenda. Usage of other LLMs than ChatGPT, quality estimation based on LLM, and integrating that also with Instant Translate, and to go more there the way that Jochen also addressed, that this is going into a multilingual management of things where you don't only speak to your client, but where things also are communicated back. So where more people are integrated in the overall process, like people are able to do their own translations based on Instant Translate and post it themselves, and use then the GPT tools within the interface themselves, but within a professional translation environment, stuff like that. That's the direction where we are going. And term extraction, of course, that was already announced by some people. Yeah, that's also on agenda.